The sun was slowly rising over the kingdom of Eldoria, casting a golden glow over the palace. The streets were quiet, and the people went about their morning routines without a care. Birds chirped happily, and the sound of horses trotting echoed faintly in the distance. But inside the palace, a sense of calm hid a storm that was about to erupt. Captain Rylan, one of the palace's most loyal soldiers, walked through the marble corridors. His armor gleamed in the morning light, and his sword hung at his side. Rylan had served the royal family for many years, and he knew every secret passage, every hidden corner, and every potential threat. But today, he felt something strange in the air, a subtle unease that made his instincts tingle. As he passed the throne room, he noticed the Queen, Isabella, standing near the balcony, watching the sunrise. She looked worried, though she tried to hide it with her usual calm expression. Rylan approached and bowed deeply. "Good morning, Your Majesty," he said. Queen Isabella turned her gaze to him. "Good morning, Captain. Are the palace guards ready for the day?" she asked. "Yes, Your Majesty. Everything is in order," Rylan replied. Yet, he could not shake the feeling that something was about to happen. He continued his morning rounds, checking the outer walls and the gates. Everything seemed normal, but a soldier returning from the nearby forest made him pause. "Captain," the soldier whispered nervously, "I saw some strangers near the east gate last night. They disappeared before I could reach them." Rylan's heart skipped a beat. The east gate was one of the oldest entrances, and it was not heavily guarded at night. "Strangers? Were they armed?" he asked. "I think so," the soldier replied, his voice trembling. "They were moving fast, and they didn't look like ordinary travelers." Rylan's mind raced. He had faced many threats in his years of service, but nothing like this had come so close to the Queen's family. He immediately sent a message to the guards, instructing them to increase their vigilance. By midday, the palace seemed normal again, and the Queen's child, little Prince Alaric, played in the royal gardens under the watchful eyes of the nannies. Rylan observed from a distance, his hand never far from his sword. He loved the child like his own family and would die to protect him. Suddenly, a loud scream echoed through the halls. Rylan ran toward the source, drawing his sword as he went. In the garden, masked figures had appeared out of nowhere, armed with knives and daggers. The nannies screamed and tried to protect the prince, but they were no match for the intruders. Without hesitation, Rylan charged. His sword clashed against theirs, sparks flying with each strike. He moved swiftly, his training and instincts taking over. But there were too many of them, and they fought with a ferocity he had never seen before. One of the intruders lunged at the prince, but Rylan threw himself in the way, taking a deep knife wound across his chest. Pain shot through his body, but he gritted his teeth and continued fighting. Another blade slashed across his arm, and then another cut tore through his side. By the time the battle seemed to be over, Rylan had taken 6 knife wounds. Blood poured from his body, staining the marble floor. Yet, the prince was safe, held tightly in Rylan's arms. Queen Isabella arrived, her eyes wide with shock and fury. She rushed to Rylan's side, kneeling beside him. "Rylan, how could you?" she started, but stopped, seeing his battered state. Rylan weakly shook his head. "Your child's safe. That is all that matters, Your Majesty," he whispered, blood trickling from his lips. The Queen's hands shook as she touched his wounds. Guards rushed forward to secure the intruders, but it was clear many had escaped into the forest. The palace was in chaos, but Rylan's sacrifice had saved the prince. As he lay on the floor, Rylan thought about his life. He had trained for battle, faced death many times, but he had never imagined being so close to losing everything he cared about. His vision blurred, but he could see the Queen standing over him, her face pale yet determined. Then something unexpected happened. Queen Isabella made a decision that shocked everyone present. She spoke to her aides in a voice that was calm but firm. "Rylan will be honored and protected. No harm will come to him again," she declared. The guards and nobles exchanged surprised glances. Rylan's mind struggled to process her words. Protected? Honored? He had only done his duty. Yet, even in his pain, he felt a strange warmth, a sense that his sacrifice had not gone unnoticed. The palace physicians arrived, tending to his wounds as best as they could. The pain was excruciating, and every movement made him wince. But he remained conscious, his eyes always on the prince, who was now safely back in the queen's arms. As the day passed, the news of the attack spread throughout the kingdom. Whispers filled the streets, and the people wondered who had dared to challenge the royal family. Rylan's bravery became the talk of the palace, but he remained humble, refusing to speak of his heroism. By nightfall, the palace was quiet once more, but a sense of tension lingered in the air. Rylan knew that this attack was only the beginning. Someone powerful had planned this, and they would not stop so easily. Queen Isabella stayed by his side, watching over him as he rested. Her eyes, though tired, burned with determination. She knew that Rylan's loyalty was unmatched, and she promised herself that she would do everything to protect him. In the silence of the night, Rylan's mind drifted. He thought about the life he had led, the battles he had fought, and the people he had lost along the way. But more than anything, he thought about his duty, the promise he had made to the queen and her child. And deep down, he knew that the unexpected turning point had arrived. His life had changed forever, and the events of this day would set the stage for challenges he could not yet imagine. The night grew darker, and the palace settled into an uneasy calm. Yet, shadows moved in the forest beyond, and Rylan knew that the danger was far from over. Tomorrow would bring new trials, new threats, and new sacrifices. But for now, he had fulfilled his duty. The queen's child was safe, and the kingdom still stood. As he closed his eyes, Rylan whispered softly to himself, "I will not fail, not now, not ever." And so, the first chapter of this unexpected turning point came to a close. A brave soldier had risked everything for the royal family, and the consequences of his actions would ripple through the palace and the kingdom in ways no one could yet foresee. The story of courage, loyalty, and unexpected heroism had only just begun. The palace had barely recovered from the shock of the previous day's chaos. News of Captain Rylan's heroism spread quickly, filling the halls with whispers of bravery and awe. Yet, despite the praise, a heavy tension hung over Eldoria. Everyone felt it, an invisible threat lurking just beyond the palace walls. Rylan had spent the morning resting, his 6 knife wounds dressed by the palace physicians. The pain was intense, but what troubled him more was the lingering unease in the air. His instincts, honed over years of battle, refused to let him rest fully. Every sound seemed louder than normal. The distant clatter of hooves, the rustle of leaves, even the soft creak of the palace doors. Queen Isabella moved through the halls with her usual grace, but her mind was restless. She knew that the attack on her child was no random act. It had been carefully planned. Her advisors and guards were alert, yet a chilling thought gnawed at her. The enemy had not yet revealed their true strength. Late in the afternoon, as the golden sun dipped toward the horizon, the first warning came. A lone scout ran into the palace courtyard, panting, covered in dust and blood. "Your Majesty," he gasped. "The intruders, they've returned. They are heading straight for the inner courtyard, and they are more numerous than before." Gasps filled the room. Rylan, still recovering, instinctively rose to his feet. "How many?" he demanded, his voice firm despite the pain in his body. "Too many to count. They move like shadows, silent, fast and deadly," the scout replied. Queen Isabella's eyes narrowed. "Prepare the defenses. Send every able soldier to the inner courtyard. Protect the prince at all costs." Her command rang like a bell of authority through the palace, and within minutes, the guards were positioned, weapons drawn, hearts pounding with fear and determination. Rylan struggled to stand, but his injuries slowed him. Yet he knew he had to be there. If anyone could protect Prince Alaric, it had to be him. Ignoring the searing pain in his chest, he gripped his sword tightly and followed the queen toward the courtyard. The sky darkened, clouds gathering as if the heavens themselves sensed the coming storm. And then it happened. From the palace gates, a group of masked intruders emerged. They moved with deadly precision, each step silent but purposeful. In their hands were swords, knives, and strange weapons that glimmered in the fading light. Their leader, taller than the others, wore a dark cloak that obscured his face. Only his piercing eyes were visible, cold, calculating, and filled with malice. Rylan felt a chill run down his spine. This was no ordinary attack. These intruders were trained, organized, and utterly ruthless. "Form a line," Rylan shouted to the guards. "No one gets past us." The first clash was violent. Metal rang against metal as swords collided. Sparks flew in the dim light, and shouts echoed through the courtyard. The soldiers fought bravely, but the attackers were relentless. One by one, Rylan saw his comrades fall, injured or disarmed. He moved like a whirlwind, each strike precise and deadly. But pain tore through his body with every swing of his sword. Blood from his previous wounds made it difficult to grip his weapon, yet he refused to yield. He had one goal: keep Prince Alaric safe. Suddenly, the leader of the intruders lunged at the young prince. Rylan acted without thinking, throwing himself in the way. A sharp blade sliced through his armor and cut deep into his side. Pain exploded across his body, and he staggered, barely keeping his balance. "Rylan," one of the guards shouted, fear in his voice. Ignoring the warning, Rylan pushed forward, his body screaming with agony. He fought through the pain, striking down intruders with a combination of skill and sheer willpower. His vision blurred, but he focused on the prince, who clung tightly to the queen's arms. The courtyard became a storm of chaos. Guards and intruders collided, swords clashing, cries of pain filling the air. Dust and blood mixed on the ground, creating a grim scene that would be remembered in Eldoria for years to come. At one point, Rylan was surrounded. 3 intruders pressed him from all sides, blades flashing toward him. He parried and dodged with incredible speed, but one knife grazed his shoulder, another cut his arm. The pain was unbearable, yet he fought on. Each movement was calculated, each strike a measure of survival and protection. Despite the ferocity of the attackers, Rylan never let his guard down around the prince. Every time an intruder came near, he threw himself in the way, taking blows that would have killed a lesser man. By the time reinforcements arrived from other parts of the palace, Rylan had already taken 6 deep knife wounds, bleeding and exhausted, yet still standing between the attackers and the child. Queen Isabella watched, horrified and amazed. She had seen bravery before, but nothing like this. Her eyes filled with tears as she saw Rylan collapse to one knee, blood streaming down his armor, yet refusing to let go of his sword. "Rylan, stay with me," she cried, rushing toward him, but she was pulled back by the guards who tried to secure the area. The leader of the intruders retreated with the rest of his group, disappearing into the shadows beyond the palace walls. The courtyard was filled with injured soldiers and the wounded captain, yet the prince was safe, held tightly in the queen's arms. Silence followed the attack, broken only by the cries of the wounded and the commands of the palace guards. Rylan's strength was fading, his body trembling from pain and blood loss. The queen knelt beside him, pressing her hands to his wounds, as if her own will could stop the bleeding. "You protected him, you saved my son," she whispered, her voice shaking. "How can I ever thank you?" Rylan tried to speak, but could only manage a weak smile. "Duty, your majesty, nothing more," he murmured. The palace physicians rushed forward, tending to his injuries with urgency. Every movement brought pain, yet Rylan remained conscious, his eyes fixed on Prince Alaric. The child looked at him with wide, innocent eyes, unaware of the danger he had narrowly escaped. As the sun set, casting long shadows over the courtyard, the queen made a silent vow. The attackers had escaped, but they would not return. Rylan had risked everything, and she would ensure his bravery was recognized. She would protect him, honor him, and see that no harm came to him again. But deep in the forest beyond the palace, the attackers regrouped. Their leader's eyes glinted with anger and determination. This was not the end. They had failed this time, but next time they would not be so easily stopped. Inside the palace, Rylan was carried to his chambers, each step a battle against his own pain. Queen Isabella followed, her mind racing with plans to fortify the palace and uncover who had dared to attack her family. She knew that this was only the beginning, a sudden attack that had changed everything, a turning point that would alter the fate of Eldoria forever. Rylan lay on the soft bed in his chambers, wounds bandaged, but still bleeding. His body ached, every breath a struggle. Yet his mind was sharp, thinking of strategies, reinforcements, and the safety of the prince. He could not rest, not yet. The kingdom's peace had been shattered, and the next threat could come at any moment. Outside, the night deepened, the palace walls standing tall but vulnerable. Guards patrolled tirelessly, aware that shadows could hide dangers unseen. And in the quiet moments, Rylan's thoughts returned to the prince, to the queen, and to the duty that bound him. He had survived 6 knife wounds, yet the battle was far from over. The palace had been tested, its defenses breached, and a new enemy had revealed itself. The sudden attack was a warning, a message that Eldoria was not safe, and that Rylan's courage would be tested in ways he could not yet imagine. As he drifted into a fitful sleep, Rylan whispered to himself, "They think this is the end, but they have no idea what is coming." The unexpected attack had set the stage for a larger battle, one that would demand courage, sacrifice, and unwavering loyalty. And for Rylan, the true test of his strength and bravery was only just beginning. The palace was quiet after the chaos of the attack, but inside, tension simmered like a fire ready to burst. Captain Rylan lay in the royal infirmary, his body bandaged, yet weak from the 6 knife wounds he had sustained. Every breath brought pain, every movement felt like knives cutting through him again. And yet, his mind was far from resting. Even as the physicians tended to him, Rylan's thoughts were on Prince Alaric. The child's safety had been his only concern during the attack, and now that the immediate danger had passed, Rylan feared what might come next. He had faced death before, but he had never risked his life for someone so innocent, so vulnerable. The weight of responsibility pressed down on him like a mountain. Queen Isabella arrived in the infirmary. Her steps were soft but determined. She had refused to leave Rylan's side after the attack. Seeing him injured had shaken her more than she wanted to admit, yet she knew she had to be strong, for him and for the kingdom. "You should be resting, Rylan," she said gently, her eyes scanning the bloodied bandages. "I am resting, Your Majesty," he replied weakly, though the truth was clear in his trembling voice. "But the prince, he must be protected. Always." The queen's gaze softened, but a flicker of worry crossed her eyes. "You have already risked everything. You cannot keep putting yourself in danger like this." Rylan shook his head, wincing at the pain. "My duty, it is my life's purpose. If I fail, the kingdom fails. If I fail, the prince suffers." The queen studied him silently. She had seen many brave soldiers in her lifetime, but Rylan was different. His courage was raw, unwavering, and terrifying in its intensity. He had faced death 6 times and still stood between danger and the child. No reward, no praise could match the devotion he had shown. As night fell over the palace, a messenger arrived. He carried news from the city outskirts. The attackers had been spotted again, moving quietly through villages and forests, leaving chaos behind. It was clear they were not just common thieves or rebels. They were part of a larger, more dangerous plan. Rylan's brow furrowed, the pain in his wounds momentarily forgotten. The threat had not ended with the attack on the palace. It had only begun. Someone wanted Prince Alaric, or perhaps something even greater, and Rylan knew that he could not let this happen. Despite his weakened state, he tried to stand, gripping his sword for support. But the physicians intervened immediately. "You are too weak," one said, shaking his head. "You need rest, or you will bleed out." Rylan looked at them with determination. "I may be weak, but I am not helpless. If they come again, I must fight. I will not allow the prince to be harmed." The queen placed her hand on his shoulder, steadying him. Then we will prepare together. You will fight when the time comes, but not alone. The palace will stand with you." Days passed, and Rylan's body slowly healed, though the scars would remain. Each night, he trained quietly, testing his strength and endurance, pushing himself to recover faster than the physicians allowed. He could not ignore the danger lurking outside. But even as he healed, the palace was a hive of tension. Nobles whispered behind closed doors, guards patrolled relentlessly, and every visitor was scrutinized. Queen Isabella increased security around the child, yet her mind was never truly at ease. She had seen Rylan's dedication, his willingness to face death for her son, and she knew that she could never repay him. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, Rylan stood in the training yard, practicing his sword movements. Every swing reminded him of the intruders, every step a memory of the attack. His body ached, but his spirit burned brighter than ever. He had survived 6 knife wounds, but he knew that survival alone was not enough. He had to be ready for what came next. Suddenly, a shadow moved near the palace walls. Rylan's eyes narrowed. His instincts screamed danger. He gripped his sword tightly, moving silently toward the source. A figure emerged, cloaked and hooded, carrying a message. The messenger knelt, bowing deeply. "Captain Rylan, this comes from the leader of the attackers. He knows you survived, and he warns that he will return. Prepare yourself, or the prince will not live." Rylan's heart raced. The words were both a challenge and a threat. He felt the weight of responsibility settle heavily on his shoulders. This was no longer a battle of chance, it was personal. And he would face it no matter the cost. Queen Isabella entered the yard quietly, her presence a calm contrast to the tension in the air. "You've received their message," she said softly. Rylan nodded. "They think they can scare me. They are wrong. I will protect the prince, even if it costs me my life." The queen studied him, seeing the determination and the pain in his eyes. She realized that his loyalty was absolute, his courage unshakable. And in that moment, she made a decision, a choice that would surprise everyone in the palace. "You will not face them alone," she declared. "I will stand with you. Every guard, every soldier, every ally will be at your side. And when the time comes, I will ensure that your bravery is remembered forever." Rylan's eyes widened. It was unheard of for the queen to take such a direct role in battle. Yet her words brought him a strange comfort. He had always fought for her, for the child, but now he knew that she would fight with him. That night, as the palace prepared for the inevitable, Rylan lay awake, listening to the distant sounds of the forest. Every rustle of leaves, every distant howl of an animal, felt like a warning. He thought of the intruders, their skill, their ruthlessness, and their determination to strike again. He also thought of the child, innocent and unaware of the danger that surrounded him. That thought steeled his resolve. No matter what happened, he would not let harm come to Prince Alaric. He would fight with every ounce of strength left in his body, even if it meant sacrificing himself again. The first signs of dawn appeared, casting pale light across the palace walls. Rylan rose slowly, his body stiff and sore, yet his mind sharp and focused. Today, the battle would continue, and he would face it with courage that would be remembered for generations. As the queen and her soldiers gathered, preparing for the arrival of the attackers, Rylan felt a strange sense of calm. The pain in his body was intense, but his heart was steady. He knew that this was his duty, his calling, and he would not fail. The gates of the palace opened, and shadows moved once more in the distance. Rylan tightened his grip on his sword, feeling the weight of responsibility settle over him like armor. The intruders were coming, and this time, he would be ready. For the sake of the prince, for the honor of the kingdom, and for the promise he had made, Rylan would face them. And if sacrifice was the price, he would pay it without hesitation. The stage was set. The hero's sacrifice was not over. It had only just begun. The morning sun had barely risen when the palace awoke to an uneasy silence. Guards patrolled the corridors more cautiously than ever, their eyes scanning every shadow, every corner, every visitor. Captain Rylan stood in the courtyard, sword in hand, still feeling the sharp sting of his previous wounds. Each movement reminded him of the attack, each memory a reminder of the danger that still lurked nearby. Word had spread quickly. The intruders were planning another strike. Their skill, ruthlessness, and persistence had shocked the entire kingdom. Rylan knew they would come for Prince Alaric again, and this time, they would not hold back. As he organized the palace guards, a sudden hush fell over the courtyard. Every soldier instinctively straightened, hands tightening on swords and spears. From the main gates, a figure approached, graceful, commanding, and unmistakably Queen Isabella herself. Her arrival was more than ceremonial. The Queen had made a decision that no one had anticipated. She would take an active role in defending her child and the palace. Her long cloak flowed behind her, armor glinting faintly in the early sunlight. The nobles and guards watched in awe, whispering among themselves. Rylan stepped forward, his hand on his sword, eyes locked on the Queen. "Your Majesty, you should not," he began, but she cut him off with a sharp look. "Rylan," she said, her voice steady yet fierce, "I will not sit behind walls while my son's life is in danger. You have risked everything for him, for all of us. Today, we stand together." The soldiers exchanged stunned glances. The Queen fighting alongside them was unthinkable, yet her determination was clear. Rylan felt a surge of respect and a twinge of fear. He had always known her to be wise and commanding, but seeing her prepared to face danger directly was something entirely different. The sun climbed higher, casting long shadows across the courtyard. The palace gates creaked open, and the intruders appeared once more. They moved like shadows, silent and deadly, their eyes fixed on the inner courtyard where Prince Alaric played under the watchful eyes of the Queen and her soldiers. Rylan's heart raced. His wounds still throbbed, yet his grip on the sword never wavered. He glanced at the Queen. Her eyes met his, filled with resolve and fire. In that moment, Rylan knew that together, they could face whatever came. The intruders attacked with precision. Blades flashed, armor clashed, and the sounds of battle filled the air. Rylan moved like a shadow himself, his movements sharp despite his injuries. Each strike of his sword was deliberate, each parry calculated to protect the child. The Queen joined the fight with surprising skill. She moved swiftly, her sword striking with authority and force. Nobles who had trained in combat were impressed, yet some struggled to keep up. Her presence inspired the guards, giving them courage they did not know they possessed. Amid the chaos, Rylan noticed the leader of the intruders approaching Prince Alaric. Without hesitation, he threw himself in the way, taking a sharp blow to his side. Pain exploded across his body, but he refused to fall. He could not allow the prince to be harmed, not again. "Captain!" a young guard shouted, rushing to help. But Rylan waved him back. "I've got this," he said, his voice strained but determined. The battle raged on, each moment more intense than the last. The courtyard became a storm of movement, blood, and steel. Yet through it all, Rylan's focus never wavered. He saw the intruder's strategy, anticipating their every move, protecting the prince with every ounce of strength he had left. Then something unexpected happened. The Queen, seeing Rylan struggle, made a decision that shocked everyone present. She stepped directly in front of the child, her sword raised, and faced the intruders head-on. "Enough!" she shouted, her voice ringing over the clash of battle. "This ends now." The intruders faltered for a moment, stunned by her boldness. It was clear they had not expected the Queen to fight personally. Rylan, still bleeding and exhausted, stared in disbelief. The Queen had not only protected the prince, but had also forced the intruders into retreat. Her courage was unmatched, and in that moment, he realized the full weight of her decision. She was not just their ruler. She was a warrior, a protector, and a strategist. The intruders regrouped, but it was too late. The Queen's forces, inspired by her bravery, pressed forward with renewed vigor. One by one, the attackers were driven back, retreating into the forest beyond the palace walls. The courtyard fell silent, save for the heavy breathing of the guards and the groans of the injured. Rylan sank to his knees, pain coursing through his body, yet relief washed over him. Prince Alaric was safe, and the immediate threat had been neutralized. But even as he caught his breath, he knew this was only the beginning. The queen approached him, her expression unreadable. She knelt beside him, examining his wounds with careful hands. "You have given everything, Rylan," she said softly. "I cannot let you continue to risk your life alone. You will recover under my protection, and I will ensure that your bravery is remembered." Rylan looked at her, the pain and exhaustion in his eyes softened by gratitude. "I only did what I had to for the prince for you," he whispered. The queen smiled faintly, her eyes reflecting both relief and determination. "You are more than a soldier, Rylan. You are a hero, and heroes must be honored and protected." Word of the queen's decision spread quickly through the palace. The nobles and guards were stunned, some whispering in awe, others in jealousy. But one thing was clear: the queen had made a choice that would change the palace forever. She had shown that bravery and loyalty were more valuable than power or wealth, and that those who risked everything for the kingdom would not go unrecognized. As night fell over the palace, Rylan lay in the infirmary, his body exhausted but his spirit renewed. He knew that his life had changed. The queen's decision had ensured not only his survival, but also his place in the history of Eldoria. Yet even in the quiet of the night, a shadow lingered. Beyond the palace walls, the intruders plotted, their leader vowing revenge. He had underestimated the queen, underestimated Rylan, and underestimated the loyalty that bound the palace together. And he would not make the same mistake twice. Inside, the queen sat by Rylan's side, her hand on his shoulder, silently promising that he would never face such danger alone again. For the first time, Rylan felt a strange sense of peace. He had fought, he had sacrificed, and now he was recognized not just as a soldier, but as a hero, a protector of the kingdom. But the night was long, and the palace was far from safe. Shadows moved in the forests, plotting, waiting, and preparing. The battle had been won, but the war was far from over. And Rylan, along with the queen, would need to face the next challenge with courage, strategy, and unwavering loyalty. The unexpected turning point had arrived. The queen's decision had changed everything: Rylan's life, the palace, and perhaps the fate of the kingdom itself. Heroes were made not just in moments of victory, but in moments of sacrifice, and Rylan had proven himself beyond any doubt. As he drifted into a restless sleep, Rylan whispered softly, "Whatever comes, I will be ready." And somewhere in the darkness, the enemy listened. Their plan had failed once, but they would return. And when they did, the true test of courage, loyalty, and sacrifice would begin. The palace was quiet in the early morning, but the air was thick with whispers. Captain Rylan's heroism had become the talk of Eldoria, and every noble, guard, and servant spoke of his bravery. Yet few could imagine the full extent of what he had endured: 6 knife wounds, the chaos of the courtyard, and the relentless fear of losing Prince Alaric. Rylan still rested in the infirmary, his body bandaged and sore. Every movement reminded him of the pain he had suffered, yet his mind was sharp, alert, and restless. He had survived, but the battle had left scars deeper than the ones visible on his skin. Queen Isabella entered quietly, her steps soft yet purposeful. She carried with her a presence that demanded attention, even in moments of calm. Her face was thoughtful, her mind clearly working through the implications of the previous day's attack. She approached Rylan's bedside, her eyes meeting his with a mixture of respect, concern, and determination. "Rylan," she said, her voice steady, "your bravery cannot go unrecognized. You risked your life to protect my son and this kingdom. It is time that your courage is rewarded." Rylan shook his head weakly. "Your Majesty, I only did my duty. No reward is necessary." The queen's expression softened, but did not waver. "Duty is admirable, but loyalty and sacrifice must be honored. Today, I am making a decision that will shock everyone in the palace. Curiosity and unease spread through the infirmary. Guards, aides, and even some nobles who had been allowed near the queen's presence leaned closer, eager to hear what she would declare. Rylan's heart pounded. He had faced death and survived, but the thought of a reward was strange, almost foreign. What could the queen possibly offer that would matter more than his life already risked? The queen raised her voice, firm and commanding, so all present could hear. Captain Rylan will be given the highest honor in Eldoria. He will not only be recognized for his bravery, but will also receive full protection and privileges in this palace, ensuring that no harm can come to him. Furthermore, she paused, letting her words sink in, I am personally assigning him as the chief protector of my son. From this day forward, he will hold a position no one else can question or challenge. Gasps echoed through the room. Some nobles were shocked, others visibly jealous. A soldier whispered, he's already a hero, but this? The queen herself giving him power? Rylan felt a mix of emotions. Pride, yes, but also fear. Power in a palace often came with dangers of its own. Envy, rivalry, and political intrigue could easily make the honored into a target. Still, he could not deny the strange relief he felt. For the first time, he knew his dedication and sacrifice would be recognized and protected. But the queen's decision carried consequences that no one yet realized. While the palace celebrated Rylan's honor, whispers of jealousy began to spread. Some nobles and soldiers believed that he had been elevated too quickly, that his position now challenged their authority. Eyes that once trusted him now watched with suspicion, waiting for a misstep that could justify their envy. Even the palace staff began to notice subtle changes. Servants who had once ignored Rylan now bowed more deeply. Advisors who had doubted him now sought his counsel. The recognition had shifted the balance of power within the palace walls, and with it, new dangers emerged. Rylan understood the risks. Being honored meant being watched, envied, and possibly betrayed. Yet, he could not allow fear to rule him. His duty remained the same. Protect Prince Alaric, defend the palace, and prepare for whatever threat might come next. The first test of his new position came sooner than expected. During a private council meeting, an advisor who had long opposed Rylan's rise subtly questioned his decisions, implying that the captain's bravery was overstated. You speak as if you know more than the queen herself, Rylan said calmly, though his eyes betrayed the tension building inside him. I have risked my life for this child and this kingdom. My actions speak for themselves. The advisor's face twisted with anger. A single act of bravery does not make one infallible. Power without caution can bring ruin. Queen Isabella's gaze was sharp, cutting through the tension. Captain Rylan has earned this position. Questioning his loyalty or courage is unacceptable. He will hold this role, and his judgment will not be undermined. The room fell silent. Nobles and advisors exchanged uneasy glances, realizing that the queen's decision was final. But Rylan knew this was only the beginning. Envy, resentment, and ambition would not disappear overnight. His new role came with unseen battles, political, personal, and perhaps even lethal. Despite the challenges, Rylan remained resolute. He continued his training, ensuring that every skill, every tactic, and every strategy was honed to perfection. The palace guards looked to him for leadership, the queen relied on him for advice, and the prince looked at him with trust and admiration that fueled his determination. One evening, as Rylan walked through the palace gardens, he noticed a figure watching from the shadows. It was subtle, almost hidden, but his trained eyes detected it immediately. He moved quietly, positioning himself to confront the intruder if necessary. The figure stepped forward, a young noble, someone who had always been critical of Rylan. Congratulations, Captain, the man said, his tone smooth but edged with venom. The Queen has elevated you above all of us. How, convenient. Rylan's grip on his sword tightened, though he did not raise it. This is not about convenience. It is about duty, loyalty, and protection. Do not mistake honor for weakness. The noble laughed softly, a sound that carried malice. "We shall see how long your protection lasts. In this palace, no one is untouchable, not even a hero." Rylan watched as the man melted back into the shadows, the threat clear but indirect. The palace, once a place of relative peace, now felt like a battlefield of politics, envy, and intrigue. His heroism had earned him a reward, but that reward had drawn the attention of dangerous eyes. Queen Isabella, aware of the shifting dynamics within her court, took measures to protect Rylan. She assigned trusted guards to watch for betrayal, monitored the movements of ambitious nobles, and ensured that the captain had the support he needed. Yet she also knew that true loyalty could not be forced. It had to be earned and tested, often in harsh ways. Days turned into weeks, and Rylan adapted to his new role. He balanced his duties with recovery, always mindful of the dangers that surrounded him. But with every challenge, his reputation grew stronger. Guards trained under his guidance, soldiers respected his experience, and even skeptical nobles began to see the value of his presence. Yet in the quiet moments, Rylan reflected on the cost of his position. Honor brought responsibility, and responsibility often meant risk. Every decision he made could affect not just his life, but the life of Prince Alaric, the safety of the palace, and the stability of the kingdom itself. One night, as he looked out over the palace walls, he sensed movement in the distant forest. Shadows shifted, figures moved silently, and his instincts screamed warning. The intruders were not finished. Their leader had vowed revenge, and now, with the palace on high alert and Rylan honored, the next attack would be even more dangerous. The hero's reward had come with consequences he could not ignore. Respect, protection, and honor were powerful tools, but they also painted a target on his back. And as the kingdom slept, unaware of the looming threat, Rylan knew that the true test of his courage, loyalty, and skill was yet to come. The night grew colder, and the palace lay in uneasy quiet. Rylan's body was healing, but his mind remained alert, every sense tuned to danger. He had survived 6 knife wounds, fought intruders, and earned the queen's trust. But now, the real challenge awaited, one that would test not just his strength, but his wisdom, his judgment, and his heart. And somewhere beyond the forest, the intruders planned their return, unaware that the hero they thought they had weakened was stronger, sharper, and more determined than ever. The unexpected reward had changed everything: Rylan's position, the palace's balance of power, and the eyes of those who watched him. But it had also set the stage for the greatest trials of his life. For the hero's path was never easy, and honor, once earned, often came with the heaviest price. The palace of Eldoria seemed calm in the early morning, yet beneath its polished walls and golden towers, tension simmered like a hidden fire. Captain Rylan had grown accustomed to vigilance, but even he could feel the heavy weight of unease pressing on the palace. The honor and protection granted by Queen Isabella had elevated him above others, but it had also painted a target on his back. For days, he had trained relentlessly, recovering strength while anticipating the intruder's next move. His wounds, though slowly healing, still throbbed with memory, and every shadow, every whisper, reminded him that danger could strike at any moment. Queen Isabella, too, had sensed the shifting balance in her court. The palace's corridors were alive with whispers of envy, suspicion, and secret plans. Some nobles openly questioned Rylan's elevation, while others plotted quietly, hoping to undermine him and seize favor for themselves. But the queen's watchful eye caught every deceitful glance, and her trust in Rylan remained unwavering. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon and the sky burned with streaks of orange and red, Rylan patrolled the outer walls. The courtyard was empty, and the palace seemed peaceful. Yet his instincts told him otherwise. The rustle of leaves, a faint footstep on the gravel, the distant snap of a branch, these were all signs he had learned to read. From the shadows of the forest, a figure watched him. The intruder leader, tall, cloaked, and masked, surveyed the palace from a distance. His eyes glinted with anger and calculation. The first attack had failed, but the second would not. This time, he would strike when Rylan and the palace were least prepared. Rylan felt it, even without seeing the enemy. His instinct screamed danger, and he tightened his grip on his sword. Every sense was alert, every muscle ready. He had survived 6 knife wounds before, but he knew this coming confrontation would be different. Inside the palace, the queen convened a secret council. Trusted advisors, elite guards, and Rylan himself gathered in the strategy room, maps and plans spread before them. The discussion was tense, filled with urgency and unspoken fears. "The intruders are no ordinary thieves," Rylan said, pointing to the forested areas around the palace on the map. "They are organized, skilled, and relentless. Their leader is clever, patient, and cruel. They will strike again, and we must be ready." One advisor frowned. "Captain, surely you exaggerate. They are few in number, and our guards are many. Surely the palace is secure." Rylan shook his head. "They are not few in number when they attack strategically. And we cannot rely solely on numbers. We need foresight, traps, and vigilance. One mistake could cost the prince, or worse, many lives." Queen Isabella nodded. "We will prepare every guard, every room, every passage. Captain, you will lead the defense. Your knowledge of the palace and your courage make you essential." Rylan's chest tightened at the weight of responsibility. His honor had brought him recognition, but it had also brought expectation. The palace now depended on him not only for courage, but for strategy, foresight, and quick thinking. Failure was not an option. That night, Rylan walked the palace halls, inspecting gates, doors, and hidden corridors. Each shadow could hide a threat, each corner could conceal a weapon. The wind whispered through the trees outside, carrying with it the sense that the enemy was near. As the moon rose high, a soft, almost imperceptible sound reached his ears, a footstep, careful and deliberate, coming from the forest near the east gate. Rylan froze, listening. The guards were stationed nearby, but he moved silently, his instincts guiding him. Through the darkness, he spotted movement, several figures advancing toward the palace, cloaked and masked as before. They moved with calculated precision, avoiding detection, their eyes fixed on the inner courtyard where Prince Alaric slept under heavy guard. Rylan acted instantly. He whispered commands to the nearby guards, positioning them in hidden spots, ready to strike. Every second mattered. The intruders were fast, silent, and deadly, and hesitation could mean disaster. The first clash was sudden and brutal. Shadows lunged at the palace walls, knives and swords flashing in the moonlight. Rylan met them head-on, his blades striking with skill and determination. Each movement was precise, each strike deliberate. Yet, even as he fought, he felt the weight of exhaustion from his previous injuries, and the pain reminded him that his body was human, not invincible. The queen herself appeared in the courtyard, her armor glinting under the moonlight. She had not expected to fight alongside Rylan again so soon, yet her presence inspired every guard and soldier. Together, they formed a protective circle around the prince, moving with coordination, strategy, and courage. The intruder leader approached, his eyes cold and calculating. He raised his blade, moving swiftly toward the prince. Rylan intercepted him, clashing swords in a shower of sparks. Pain shot through Rylan's side where the old wounds had barely healed, but he ignored it. He could not falter, not now. "You survived before," the intruder hissed, his voice low and dangerous. "But this time you will not." Rylan's eyes narrowed. "I protect the prince. You will not succeed." The battle escalated. Guards fought bravely, but the intruders were relentless. Rylan moved like a shadow, striking, parrying, and countering, his body screaming in protest. Yet through the chaos, his mind remained clear, focused on protecting the child. Every attack, every movement, was calculated to shield Prince Alaric from harm. Suddenly, a trapdoor opened beneath one of the intruders, and he fell into a hidden chamber prepared by Rylan and the queen. The plan worked perfectly, giving the palace a small advantage. Yet even as one intruder was caught, others pressed forward, determined to break through. Rylan's stamina was tested as never before. His muscles burned, his wounds throbbed, and his breathing came in shallow gasps. But he refused to give in. For the prince, for the kingdom, for the honor he had been given, he fought with everything he had left. The intruder leader, realizing his plans were failing, signaled a retreat. Shadows slipped back into the forest, leaving the palace battered but intact. Rylan, breathing heavily, looked around at the courtyard. Guards were. "You did it," she said softly. "Once again, you protected him and the kingdom." Rylan's body sagged, exhaustion overwhelming him, yet a sense of fulfillment settled over him. He had survived, fought bravely, and proven that his courage and loyalty were unmatched. But even as relief filled the courtyard, he knew the intruders had not given up. Their return was inevitable, and the next strike would be even more dangerous. As the night deepened, Rylan remained vigilant. He walked the palace walls, his eyes scanning the forest, his ears listening for the slightest sound. The shadows of revenge had not faded. They were gathering strength, waiting for the right moment to strike again. Queen Isabella met him in the quiet courtyard. "Rylan," she said, her voice firm, "you have done more than anyone could ask. But these attackers will not stop. We must remain prepared, and I trust you to lead the defense. The safety of the prince and the kingdom depends on it." Rylan nodded, the weight of responsibility heavy on his shoulders. "I understand, Your Majesty. I will not fail." The shadows of revenge loomed over Eldoria, and Rylan knew that the coming days would test every ounce of his skill, courage, and loyalty. He had survived 6 knife wounds before, faced death in the courtyard, and earned the queen's trust. But the war was far from over, and the rising danger threatened not just his life, but the very heart of the kingdom. For a hero's path was never simple, and every victory invited new challenges. The intruder's return had marked the beginning of a new chapter, one filled with cunning enemies, hidden threats, and the ultimate test of Rylan's bravery. And as the first light of dawn touched the palace towers, Rylan steeled himself. Whatever shadows came next, whatever dangers awaited, he would stand ready. The hero's sacrifice, honor, and courage had not yet been fully tested. The kingdom of Eldoria held its breath, knowing that the greatest trials were still to come. The palace of Eldoria was quiet at first light, bathed in the golden glow of the rising sun. The previous nights had been filled with chaos, attacks, and near-death encounters. Captain Rylan's wounds had slowly begun to heal, yet his body still carried the marks of sacrifice, 6 knife wounds that would forever remind him of the battles he had endured to protect Prince Alaric. Despite the physical pain, Rylan remained vigilant. His mind could not rest, not while shadows still lingered beyond the palace walls. The intruder's last attack had been repelled, but their retreat was not surrender. It was a promise. A promise of revenge, and Rylan knew that the next strike could be even deadlier. Queen Isabella moved through the palace with her usual grace, yet her eyes reflected a deeper concern. The safety of her son weighed heavily on her, but she also knew that Rylan had proven himself beyond measure. His bravery, loyalty, and sacrifice had earned her trust, and she now regarded him not just as a soldier, but as a protector whose courage could not be questioned. Rylan stood in the inner courtyard, observing the training of the palace guards. His body ached with every movement, yet his mind remained sharp. Every guard, every soldier, every weapon had to be prepared. The intruders were cunning, and the palace could not afford a single lapse. Suddenly, a messenger arrived, breathless and panicked. "Captain Rylan, the intruders have been spotted again. They are gathering in the northern forest. It seems they are planning something larger than before." Rylan's eyes narrowed. His instincts told him this was not just another attack. It was a coordinated strike, a culmination of everything they had failed to achieve before. He signaled to the queen, who immediately called for a council of war. "This ends today," Rylan said, his voice firm. "We have prepared. We have strategy. And we have the courage to face them. We will protect the prince and this palace, no matter the cost." The queen nodded. "And you will not be alone, Rylan. Every guard, every soldier, every ally will fight by your side. Together, we will ensure that the kingdom remains safe." Night fell, and the palace prepared for the final confrontation. Torches lined the walls, guards took their positions, and every corridor was monitored. Rylan, despite his weakened body, moved among the soldiers, offering guidance, strategy, and reassurance. His presence alone inspired courage, turning fear into determination. From the darkness of the northern forest, shadows moved. The intruders emerged silently, their leader standing tall, masked and cloaked, eyes filled with vengeance. They had learned from their previous failures, and this time, they were determined to succeed. The battle erupted with sudden intensity. Rylan led the defense, moving with precision despite his lingering injuries. Blades clashed, arrows flew, and the night was filled with the chaos of combat. Yet through it all, Rylan focused on one goal: protect Prince Alaric at all costs. Queen Isabella fought beside him, her sword striking with skill and authority. Together, they formed an unbreakable line around the child. Every intruder who attempted to advance was met with unwavering resistance. At one point, the intruder leader broke through the outer line, aiming directly for the prince. Rylan intercepted him, their swords colliding with sparks and fury. Pain shot through Rylan's side, old wounds tearing anew, yet he did not falter. "You will not harm him," Rylan growled, determination burning in his eyes. The leader laughed softly, a cold, cruel sound. "You are brave, but even heroes fall." Rylan's muscles screamed, his body trembling, yet he pushed forward, striking with every ounce of strength. Their duel was intense, a battle of skill, will, and survival. Finally, Rylan disarmed the intruder with a precise move, forcing him to retreat. The remaining intruders, seeing their leader defeated, fled into the darkness. The palace stood victorious, though the cost had been high. Guards were injured. The courtyard was scarred from battle, yet Prince Alaric was safe. Rylan collapsed to his knees, exhaustion overtaking him, and the queen rushed to his side. "You did it once again," she said softly, pressing her hand to his shoulder. "You protected him and the kingdom. You are a hero beyond words." Rylan smiled faintly, bloodied but alive. "I only did what was necessary for the prince for you, for Eldoria." The next day, the palace held a ceremony to honor Captain Rylan. Nobles, soldiers, and citizens gathered to witness the recognition of his bravery. Queen Isabella stood before the assembly, her voice carrying across the courtyard. "Captain Rylan has risked his life countless times to protect my son and our kingdom. His courage, loyalty, and sacrifice have earned him a place in the history of Eldoria. Today, we honor him not just as a soldier, but as a hero." The crowd erupted in applause, yet even amidst the celebration, Rylan noticed something unusual. Among the gathered nobles, a shadow moved, one of the advisors who had previously plotted against him. The man's eyes burned with jealousy, but Rylan felt no fear. He knew that true bravery and loyalty could not be undone by envy or deceit. After the ceremony, the queen approached him privately. "Rylan," she said, her voice serious, "your actions have saved more than just lives. They have saved the spirit of this kingdom. You will always have my trust, my protection, and my gratitude." Rylan bowed deeply. "Your Majesty, I am honored beyond words. I only wish to continue serving, protecting, and ensuring the safety of the prince and Eldoria." But just as peace seemed to settle over the palace, a final twist unfolded. A young messenger arrived, trembling and wide-eyed. "Your Majesty, Captain Rylan, you must see this immediately." He led them to the edge of the palace gardens, where a small, mysterious chest had appeared, left without explanation. Queen Isabella opened it cautiously. Inside lay a letter, written in a hand both familiar and chilling, the handwriting of the intruder leader who had been defeated. The letter read simply, "You have won the battles, but the war is far from over. Heroes can die, kingdoms can fall, and even trust can be betrayed. Remember this, for the next move is mine, and it will come when you least expect it." Rylan's eyes narrowed, the weight of the warning pressing down on him. The intruder leader had vanished, but his reach was not gone. The message was a reminder. Peace was fragile, and the hero's work was never truly finished. Queen Isabella looked at Rylan, a mixture of pride and concern in her eyes. You have done more than anyone could ask, but we must remain vigilant. Eldoria is safe for now, but the shadows of danger will always exist. Rylan nodded, determination burning in his gaze. He had survived 6 knife wounds, faced countless enemies, and earned the Queen's trust. Yet he knew the journey of a hero never truly ends. Danger, betrayal, and unexpected challenges would continue to test him. But he was ready. For the hero remembered is not just the one who survives battles, but the one who endures, sacrifices, and stands unwavering in the face of danger. And Captain Rylan had proven himself, bloodied, scarred, but unbroken. As the sun set over Eldoria, casting a warm glow over the palace towers, Rylan stood beside the Queen and the Prince, gazing into the horizon. The intruder's threat lingered, the shadows of revenge remained, and the kingdom's future was uncertain. But for now, courage had triumphed, loyalty had been honored, and a hero's legacy had been etched into history. And somewhere, beyond the forests and mountains, the intruder leader watched, plotting, waiting, knowing that the next challenge would be even greater. But Rylan was ready, his spirit unshakable, his courage unmatched, and his loyalty unwavering. The hero's story was complete for now.